in '89, Chad put a flyer up in the McNeese band room, and I caught it and gave him a call.
Actually, Kevin Radomski said give this guy a call. So he's the one that told us to go pull your numbers. So,
Okay.
so I think that's how he suggested you from Snarly Whiplash.
Okay.
And Retention, which was more kind of hair metal, I guess.
And covers.
And covers.
Lots of covers.
But then Kyle, our other bass player, moved to Chicago. Entered James.
I got plucked out of high school.
Kyle actually suggested
Yeah.
James.
The
So
new guy.
Yes, that fella.
James was when he first joined the band, he was underage, so we had to sneak him in the bar. I think your dad even had to like get you into a few of them.
At one point.
Yeah.
Yeah, not much has changed really.
Thingfish was more. It wasn't even called grunge yet. It was called like alternative or postmodern, I think is what they called it at the time. We were heading in that direction,
Yep.
more in a James Addiction-y, Nirvana-ish direction. Before that was kind of the hip thing to do. We had already kind of jumped on that. So I think we were the first band to be doing that around here that got away from the metal scene.
Ahead of our time.
Fine.
Back then, I was the music store guy. I worked at Sound Shop in the mall, so
Also the responsible one.
yeah, I had the job. You know, I got all the demos from all these new bands coming in, and I'm pretty sure I'm the one that when the Jellyfish tape came in, which was one of our big influences even till today, I was like, Tracy, you got to hear this.
Mr. Bungle.
Yeah, Mr. Bungle. So I would get all these promos from the record labels all the time, and they weren't necessarily popular bands. They were new bands they were pushing. That's what they did back then. They sent the
Maggie's
stores.
Dream.
Yeah, Maggie's Dream. So I have a very wide taste in music, and especially since back then. But it was a lot of the Jane's Addiction, Nine Inch Nails, Maggie's Dreams, a lot of stuff people didn't really know. But we could take their styles and kind of build them into our music, and people didn't know.
Nobody knew we were ripping people off.
Yeah, no one knew what we were doing. Can't pull that off today. At the internet.
No. No.
Yeah, they'd bring stuff in from Sound Shop, like, listen to this, you know.
And then
What is this stuff, you know?
about an hour later,
We're playing it.
And Steve would just say, "This isn't Rush."
Right.
I cut my teeth on Geddy Lee from Rush, but actually Tracy and Chad introduced me to King's X, and there is a spiritual vein in their music that just hit me in a way that few other things ever have. In turn, I owe a great debt to these guys for the music that they introduced me to, particularly Jane's Addiction. There is a spirituality to the music that I think that we tried to express when we played live that hopefully we can rekindle, but that I feel like really drove us forward and really built a very, very strong bond amongst us as musicians as well as friends.
Like James, drums and percussion, so I grew up on Rush. And again, got into King's X, but some of those bands from the '80s, not so much for the music, but just the drummers like Vinnie Colaiuta, Steve Smith, people like that.
I was at the time I was like into punk. I mean, I was into Minor Threat and Black Flag and into The Cure, and then Chad kind of brought me more into the alternative side, the Jane's Addiction and the King's X and all that other stuff too. So, and we all kind of had the same influences at the same time. Definitely Jellyfish, as far as this band was concerned, and Dash Rip Rock. I mean, they're a local band, but boy, we ripped them off. Then I became friends with them later, and I had to confess, I was like, we stole everything y'all did, right? We've all stayed in touch over the years, and we've always discussed playing together, especially mainly with Steve, because James kind of let us know he was out the loop because of his military stuff, and so we figured Brian Moore would be our bass player, and it just so happened, when we talked about doing this, James says, I'm in. We're like, well, okay. Okay, so let's do it. We got to have all the original four guys, But
James was in, I was in, had to.
Yeah, this show means a lot to me because when Paul approached me about doing the show, he said we're going to pick a cause, and I knew that Paul's son's autistic, and then I found out later that Justin's son is well. So, but my brother's son Jackson, he's autistic, and it's something I didn't know anything about until 13 years ago, and just to see the schooling that he gets in Houston and how he's come around because of the school and the funding in his school. So if we can do anything to help locally. For a good cause, and that's a great cause. It's a
Absolutely.
It's a rising concern.
Absolutely.
here locally, worldwide. So yeah, so we're glad to be a part of it.